And yeah, that's pretty much the only reason I don't like it. I guess the Sherman might be better. Lots of hard fighting going on the right, but xccam has not been molested much on the left, so he's done the right thing and used most of his energy to help fight in the middle. But it is interesting that he hasn't been attacked on the left. That's how you know your opponents are not very good, if they're not keeping the pressure up on all fronts at once. And just as I say it, speaking of keeping the pressure up, xccam is showing that he is very good, or at least he doesn't suck, because he is keeping the pressure up. He's telling his riflemen to move forward on that far left point. Often it's a delicate balance between keeping your points that you have defended and attacking the opponent. Like in a 3v3 like this, one guy's spawning on the left at xccam, one guy's spawning in the middle, and one's on the right. And if you spawn on the left, you had better hold the left no matter what you do, and that's what your job is. So often it's scary to try and push forward and take the point in front of you, because then if you lose your point, really you just hurt your team for nothing. But it's important to keep the pressure up everywhere and not just bow to the temptation to just sit back and hold your point and say, you know what, I'm doing enough, maybe I'll help you out in the mid a bit, but look, no one's taking my point and I'm winning. The reason you can't do that is not just because it's bad tactics, but also because your allies are often worse than you, and so you need to go above and beyond your duties and responsibilities and actually be proactive and take the point, as xccam is doing. Even if you're all, it doesn't matter if your allies are worse than you, even if you're all of exact same you're clones of each other, or you're triplets or something, even if you're all exactly as skilled, although I doubt triplets would be, maybe they would be. I don't know, does anyone know twins who play video games? Are they exactly the same? I guess they'd have to be identical twins, although they don't, like, you can look exactly like each other and not technically be identical twins. It's like some DNA thing that makes you identical, but you can still look the same, like I had a roommate. What was I talking about? Yeah, even if you're all as good as each other, you should still keep the pressure up on every point. You saw on the right the enemy had actually taken the Americans' point on the right and had pushed very far, but now the Americans have pushed and taken the enemy's point on the left, so it's even. Everybody's happy, except for me with all these blooping noises that xccam's program is making. Maybe it's Xfire or something, I don't know. Or some chat program. It's always this chat program making noises. Why are chat programs the ones that always make noises on your computer? Why do they think they have some sort of monopoly on making noise? It looks like we bought an M39 Slugger, and if xccam knows what he's doing, which I have to admit, it appears that he does in fact know what he's doing. He's going to use a Slugger to try and hit the sides and rear of these enemy tanks. The Slugger, or actually no, I mean, especially when you're fighting the British, you can do a frontal assault. But the thing about, oh, it's that noise again. The thing about tank destroyers is that obviously their armor is so much weaker. Whoa, it's a scout. I think his name is Marvin. Is everyone named Marvin in this game? I hope he selects some other infantry. No, that guy's name is John. Yeah, the thing about tank destroyers is it's a pretty obvious thing. I mean, like, their armor is weaker, so you try not to get in knockdown fights with them. But there's a lot of nuance to using a tank destroyer, and they're certainly a lot harder to use than tanks. Obviously, a tank you can fight from any direction, because even if you're not hitting them from the side, as long as you have your frontal armor facing them, it's pretty much a 1v1 fight. And obviously there's nuance to that. If you're fighting German tanks, you don't want to do that, because they're just going to shoot through your frontal armor because they're better than you. Or often if you're fighting Russian tanks as Americans, which I don't know why you would be. Maybe you're trying to start the Cold War before the Russians get the Berlin Wall up. But it pretty much, yeah, Americans and British pretty much get screwed in terms of tanks. You can't really fight one-on-one all the time. But let's assume for whatever reason you have about equal tanks. Maybe you have a Panzer IV versus a T-34, they're about equal, you know, approximately, extremely. Look, it's Marvin. If you have equal tanks, then yes, you can do a head-on fight, or you can try some crazy flanking stuff, or whatever you do, you can be secure in the knowledge that your tank is going to be more or less resilient when the enemy fires at it. Sure, one shell can fly out of nowhere and kill you, and if you turn your back, you're going to get screwed, but you don't really have to be. You can shrug off a few shells, usually. You can get lucky and not die. But the thing of the tank destroyer, you can't do that, okay? Your tank destroyer gets shot, it's probably going to die, and even if it doesn't die, it's probably going to die, is what's going to happen. So things are so fatal to tank destroyers. It's a completely different game when you're using them. Not only protecting them from tanks, but even from infantry, just because I guess they're about the same, infantry versus tanks. I guess you have to be slightly more careful, but it's fighting tanks that the doctrine completely changes, so you really got to use your tank destroyer with a whole lot of nuance, and you got to find something that works for you. I personally have not found something that works for me. I generally just buy tanks instead of tank destroyers, and only buy them when I really need the better gun, and I just don't. The tank is not an option for some reason. But yeah, you just gotta be extremely careful. Now we have an M20. This thing is a terror with its 50 caliber, but it doesn't have anything other than a 50 caliber. And you gotta be careful when driving through buildings with light vehicles or with vehicles that have people on top, because when the building falls around you, the debris can often crush your people. Looks like the Germans have done something very, very stupid and left their artillery completely unguarded in the middle of a not Germans. Why am I saying Germans? Because they're bad guys. The British did something very, very stupid, left their artillery unguarded in the middle of a road leading directly to the enemy. That is the worst possible position for artillery. Like, not only is it unguarded, not only is it in the middle of a road leading to the enemy, but it's unguarded and in the middle of the road leading to the enemy. What you want to do is stick it behind a hill with a bunch of stuff guarding it, or at least behind a hill, or at least not in the middle of the frickin' road, because otherwise someone will drive up and just shoot you. I'm not sure if you noticed, but he just lost his slugger. A Sherman shot it once and it exploded, never got a chance to use his tank destroyer for anything, and that, my friends, is the danger of a tank destroyer. One shot, one kill. It's like everything is a sniper when they're shooting a tank destroyer. Except for snipers. Snipers can't shoot tank destroyers. I guess if you had a sniper on something really tall, like a tree, and a tank destroyer drove directly under him, then he could fire down into the open top. But I have never seen that happen, and I imagine I'm never going to see that happen. Although, that does sound pretty funny, and maybe I'll try and set it up in a game I'll play later. Maybe I'll stick my own sniper in a tree, then drive my own tank destroyer under and make my sniper fire. So we have a Scot firing at a Sherman using an HE shell, which is wrong. That's not going to hurt the Sherman, and hitting the building instead, which is wrong. That's not going to hurt the Sherman either, hitting the building. And he gets what was coming to him. The Sherman Firefly, in fact, fires back at the Scot and kills it. Light tank versus heavy tank, one-on-one fight. Only do it if you can get your light tank out of the way after you fire each time. Otherwise, the heavy tank will shoot back. You'll die no matter what. And most likely, your light tank is not going to penetrate anyways. The exception is from behind, where you certainly can penetrate with fairly good regularity with a light tank versus heavy tanks. Obviously, all of this depends on what tanks are in the equation. Everything always depends what tanks are in the equation in Men of War. For example, the Pershing can shoot the Sherman from the front and kaboom, and then it dies. That is certainly a way to do things, and when everything else fails, you can certainly bring in the heavy tanks. I would have probably tried one more time with some sort of infantry, because there's a lot of bushes, a lot of cover leading up to that Firefly. You could just buy a bazooka man, but you know, you want a Pershing, you buy a Pershing, and now he's going to own the 17-pounder artillery. Kaboom! Don't overload on the artillery, guys. Oh wow, that's a turtle. Maybe if he fights the turtle more, I'll talk about the turtle more. But too many people in too many games. I know I've never even played World of Conflict. I don't even own the game World in Conflict. But I hear that one of the biggest problems in that game is the noobs joining the team and just using a bunch of heavy artillery and trying to win the game with heavy artillery, okay? This happens in Company Heroes too sometimes when you fight extreme noobs as Americans or British. They'll build a bunch of howitzers and sit back and try and shell you to death. And it certainly happens in Men of War too when people buy a bunch of, I don't know, 25-pounder artillery or whatever the heck. Wow, that manages to take out the Scot, the 25-pounder. While I'm busy talking about how artillery is stupid, the 25-pounder kills something. But, yeah, do not overload on artillery. I certainly buy a mortar. I think everyone should buy a mortar, maybe even 2 mortars. I think mortars are more important than brushing your teeth, even. But, other than that, really, just think about the artillery. Be moderate with the artillery. The more artillery you buy, the less tanks you have to fight their tanks, the less machine gunners you have to mow down their infantry, the less riflemen and submachine gunners you have to take their things, the less stuff you have to hide in bushes and ambush people, the less smoke grenades you have. You see this toss of smoke grenades to move in on this point and take it. Artillery is really not a force multiplier. Artillery is just, you have to get lucky with the shells or hope your opponents are stupid and don't move at all. Something took that Pershing's engine out, probably artillery that I've been whining about.